I love my country. I love my people. North, South, or Center. We are brothers from the same mother, Vietnam. But I criticize the communist ideology adopted by the government of North Vietnam, provoking war and dictatorship for our people. On April the 30th, 1975, Saigon capitulated. The population tried to flee to avoid communism. About 200,000 to 600,000 of both people drowned in China Sea, according to the United Nations. The North has used the Gulag system on more than 1 million South Vietnamese, according to Vietler, Arizona University. About 1/3 of them died after 3 years of detention. The War of Independence ended with the defeat of France at Dien Bien Phu. Then followed another war of ideology between communism and the free world. While the United States provided aid and support to South Vietnam, China and Russia did the same to Ho Chi Minh, but we don't know the extent. According to Jennifer Levlin, the North urged his troops to liberate oppressed and starving South Vietnamese, but it was the contrary. The South was prosperous, living in democracy. The North backward and oppressed by communism. After Americans' departure, the freedom of Vietnamese has been sold to a totalitarian regime. Here, in his camp diary, illustrated by Lucien Trọng by himself, an assistant of the University of Saigon, recounts with simplicity the life of a re-education camp in the Mekong Delta. In background, the life of the South Vietnamese suffering hunger, fear, and humiliation. The reality of the camps of re-education in the North would probably be worse. I learned of the advance of the North Vietnamese tanks while I was in Manila participating in an ASEAN conference on agricultural research. I was coming back to Saigon just a few days before his fall. Like a game of bowling, the cities fell. The population was fleeing communism at the risk of their lives, while the government of the North claimed that the people were rising up, being liberated. The loudspeakers were sprouting like mushrooms. The change of currency, a campaign to destroy books. Call to report for education from few into months, which was a lie, because in reality, the duration was unlimited and there was no trial at all. One morning, an attempt of murder on my brother-in-law happened in front of my parents' house. When he took refuge, many officers being executed in the offices. My brother escaped, but the man could shoot my sister or myself being around. A month after the fall of Saigon, I decided to flee Vietnam. Unfortunately, I was denounced and arrested at Go Cong, a coastal city in Vietnam. Refusing to live under a communist regime, I took 2 tubes of barbiturates. I woke up in Miser prison. My neighbor Ong Sao forced me to drink and eat a little rice from a can of Gigo's milk. A few weeks later, I was sent to the Mai Phuoc Thai camp in the Mekong Delta, tied up in a crowded bus. Prisoners stared at us from behind the barbed wires. The camp covered about 2 hectares and had 3 rows of dilapidated straw huts, an office, a central kitchen, a women's prison, and a row of conics. We were about 1,000 prisoners belonging to various categories: small civil servants, non-commissioned officers, escape candidates like me. Namson, the head of the cell, pointed out to me a corner large enough to put the rotten mat that Ongso gave me. While cleaning the place, I found an old thick book that I was hiding to read in secret. This was still tempered by Nikolai Ostrovsky, translated under Vietnamese. What luck. I was able to escape my thoughts. I was exhausted, hungry and thirsty. A boy who was eating glutinous rice cake gave me a bite. Lee entered the camp a few days before, following a fight with a North Vietnamese. As he had arrived at the camp before me, he described to me what awaits me. Gong at 4 o'clock, a drink will rim, meal in the morning, a bowl of rice, a spoon of soup. Same portion in the evening. You have to keep half the morning if you want to eat something at noon. With this diet, you're hungry all the time. But we can supplement with what we find in the garbage heap behind the kitchen. Digging canals, harvesting rice, or cutting tall grass. These sites often were far from the camp, and sometimes you have to swim across a river, sickle or rake on your head. A loss of tools was equivalent to the destruction of public property and can lead you to the conics. The conics. They are the mysterious containers lined up in the central courtyard. Through meters iron cubes recovered from the American army to contain ammunition. Not only reluctant inmates were locked up there, several of the prisoners were there too, for having spoken to the women. How come there were women in men's camp? The women's prison, pompously called the Dignity Recovery Center, was used to lock up girls working in bars for Americans. They learned to braid mats. You call that learning a trade? And it takes 3 years for that. Mrs. Tam, a former pimp, leads her flocks firmly, a whip in her hand. But the girls like her and called her Mom. We provided them with tall grass to make mats, or sometimes they went and got them themselves. We happened to meet them, but it was forbidden to talk to them. Without the conics, or with the women's jail, 1 day in prison is equivalent to 1,000 days in freedom. The days passed monotonous and terrible. I suffered them like a sleepwalker. To try to evade, it was to give it a greater grip. To survive, I respected from now on 3 rules: hear nothing, see nothing, say nothing. But despite all that, the regime makes me suffer. By brainwashing, nothing can change me or re-educate me. I remain myself whether you like it or not. That day, we had to clean up a fallen canal. Lee was going up to rest on the bank when Doc Rowe, the person in charge of the chore, called out to him. Tired and angry, Lee answered him. Discerningly, a fraternal criticism at the meeting that followed. He hardly escaped the conics, but he had to write his self-criticism. He received paper and pen. I saw him hesitate, and then asked me to write for him, because he could barely read and write. I didn't care, because Lee was starting to be dear to me. I rejoiced at every opportunity that allowed me to show him my friendship. On the first day of my arrival at the camp, he felt sorry for me because of my look and dull crossing on my way of escape. And in ordinary times, far from me any idea to make friends with a thug like him. Ted was approaching, and we thought, with sadness, of our past New Year's festivities. Surprisingly, the bureau informed us that we could write to our families and ask for some gifts. In reality, it is to prevent us from dying of hunger. To receive the family, we had to erect two hedges a few meters apart. You had to shout to be able to exchange a few words in the hubbub. I learned from my mother and sister that my brother-in-law is being sent to North Vietnam, that my niece could not go to public school because her father was an officer of the old regime, that my father was often sick. I was given black peasant pajamas, a floppy hat, and sweets. On that evening, we made an underground fire, exceptional permission. We drank tea from half coconuts. We enjoyed cricket fights, kept in matchboxes. You look like a Viet Cong, Lee told me. Beware what you say, dumb. I laughed. In the dark room, some fires warmed our heart for the first time. The aftermath of the festivities was bitter. We have to work on Sundays. It seems that throughout the country, the harvests were disastrous because of the lack of enthusiasm of the peasants who are enrolled in cooperatives. South Vietnam, the breadbasket of Asia, is empty. How did the people's government manage? One night, we were awakened by explosions coming from the minefield. Several prisoners tried to escape, but some were killed by the guards. Others jumped on the mines. The next day, the bureau proceeded to change all the cells in half to separate the friends. Lee was sent to another cell. Now, I didn't have anyone to talk to, and so another year passed without us being judged or we are freed. But the chief of camp changed. The new one is from South Vietnam and loves the Tai Lung, the renovated theater kind of Chinese opera. An Hai, or Brother Hai, allowed us to call him so. He wanted to create a troupe of theater and a football team. An Hai found the theater director in the person of Chuba, a performer manager of a provincial Tai Lung group. After the audition, Chuba found many talented actors as Kim Rong and Hong Chao. But for the actresses, they will have to be found among the male inmates because of the internal regulations. Chuba chose 3 persons, me, Boy Dan, and Huda Ha, and designated me as the main actress, laughter and slight protest. We were like dried up plants that have just been watered because spiritual food is also important. We built the stage and the football field in record times, and had brought us reduced versions of some plays. He brought us classes recovered from the candidates for escape that we incorporated cold plastic and shiny paper from cigarette packets. That entertainment program was unicorn dance by Chinese inmates, a match of football, and a silent play. A football match in which Lee was a part. When evening came, the generator was turned on, illuminating the scene. The detainees were placed in front of the stage, and had family seats on the chair, placed along the kitchen wall. Chuba changed the camp management and motioned for me to enter the red and blue lead stage. I didn't know what to do, with my duck feeder fan when comments came up. Who is this actress? She's not Bart, this girl. I was panicked, but I remembered that the joy of the camp depends on this moment. I felt free. I entered the role, and the play ended with warm applause. Thanks to my acting skills, I didn't have to go to the experimental camp and maybe escape death. The life of the camp is now suspended from the shows, often on Saturday evenings, and if it did not rain, our repertoire was enriched. But an incident occurred during the show. After a conical hat dance performed by the inmates of the women's jail, a girl took advantage of the mess behind the scene to slip a letter into my hand. Unfortunately, Maman, Tam, appeared out of nowhere and snatched the paper from my hands. The next day, we learned that Henriette was chained to a pole in the women's prison. I will be sent to the conics if Mama Tam is not a witness, that the younger is taking the initiative. It seems that Henriette refused to write self-criticism and also to feed herself. Rumor has it that she was dying. One evening after the show, I was summoned to the bureau. I took off the makeup and put on a shirt. I was worried. What did I do? I had to accompany Enkai to the women's prison to heal Henriette, who had fainted after a fall. In the dark and miserable room, Henriette was lying on a torn mat, her hair scattered, her face pale. Mama Tam urged me to call her name, and I threatened me with conics if Henriette died. I felt sorry for her. I called her name several times, covered her with my shirt, because it was cool in the evening. Nothing. I was disappointed. But when we left the barracks disappointed, we heard Mama Tam screaming, "Come and see. She has woken up." Mysterious Henriette. Who is she? A peasant woman living near Laos and performing a lamb song dance at the camp? A Viet Cong fighter? Or a Boer girl spying on the Americans? They would rapidly remove the chain from Henriette, who was recovering. I had the opportunity to see her again sometime later, when they evacuated the women's jail because of a flood that threatened to overwhelm us. She was among the last to get into the trucks. It seems to me that she gave a glance to Cell 9. That was the last time I saw Henriette. A few months after that, our rations were further reduced. Football teams too weak were dissolved. The camp was filled up with more bold people candidates printed. The bureau ordered that some detainees should be reserved for the construction of new barracks in a deprived area of the Delta, where there is no possible life. And yet, Lee was sent there among the first. One rainy morning, a boat was returning from the experimental camp, bringing back the seriously ill because the mortality rate was too high. Lee was not among them, but I made the decision to go to the experimental camp, but I had to find a way. Since Namsen was enterprising with the actress, I decided to take advantage of it, and he appointed me one day to accompany a boat providing supplies. After a long drive through a desert area, the experimental camp appeared. A few straw huts on the embellishments of recently dug canals. Behind the barbed wire, skeletons carrying sandbag canvases. Eyes that no longer express anything, maybe the ultimate desire to end it. I saw Lee again, emaciated, with his head shaved. On my way back, I feel weary and sad. What could be justified after April the 30th, 1975 is no longer justifiable. Locking people up without trial for an indefinite period of time until death. Is this the ultimate policy of communism? Then a flood occurred, submerging the roofs in some places and drowning the camp, becoming a pond. We had to set the platforms to sleep. I would get sick and stay column in the torn blanket. I grew thin and weakened day by day, weighing more than 3 years, and died without seeing my family, without seeing Lee. But something incredible happened, and I was released. Why I didn't know. What I knew was to get away from this cursed place as quickly as possible. The city of Silay was moderately flooded, barefoot in rags and without money. I clung to the door of a crowded bus about to leave. Looking at me with compassion, the driver told me, "Get in." I realized then why I loved my people. My father told me why I was released. Once upon a time, my paternal grandfather was a good traditional doctor. From those who have no money, he took nothing. He adopted San, a boy whose parents were Viet Minh. As an adult, Uncle San considered my father as his brother. One day, when he was taking my grandfather's annual commemoration without seeing me, he asked about me. When he learned that I was in the Mai Phục Thai camp, he seemed shocked. The chief of this camp is in fact the husband of one of his nieces. After 3 years under the communist regime, I hardly recognized Saigon empty and sad. Our house neglected and gloomy. My mother and the housewives queued up for their daily rations like beggars. I only had the provisional release paper left. It is rumored that due to the war with China, they will arrest those who have recently been released. I have to leave Vietnam again, and quickly. With my sister's last hidden savings, after a thrill lock in a rejected truck with my companions of the run, I embarked in Rach Jia on a medium fishing boat, VNKG 0071. Our overloaded boat almost drowned under 2 storms. The Thai pirates robbed the women, beat the men, but sent us drinking water. The engine would fail, and the boat would wander around like a ghost ship. A few people had died when, around the 6th or 7th day, we landed on an apparently deserted island, Pulau Island, welcomed its first boat people. Shortly after precarious life on the island, a Red Cross helicopter spotted us. The day before we left for Malaysia, we made a big, beautiful fire, but I felt my eyes tickling. Farewell, Vietnam. Farewell to all those I love. Goodbye, Vietnam. Red hell, my love.